everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I am so excited to share that we are going to be relaunching our practice hands. So if you knew or didn't know, our previous practice hands are from VEEROCKS, and we are in the process of bringing out a more realistic hand for y'all to use, and I am actually going to be featuring it in today's video. So if you guys are interested in that, stay tuned as we will be launching very soon. They are not on the website yet, so I will be sharing that information as we get closer to launch date. But I'm so excited to be doing a spring design for today's video, as I'm so excited that spring is here. It is one of my favorite seasons as the weather is so perfect here in Florida. So I hope you guys are excited as well. We're gonna be doing some pastel colors with florals, definitely very beginner friendly. So if you are a new nail tech or an aspiring nail tech, definitely watch this one, because I'm going to be giving you lots of tips and tricks on acrylic application, on Frenchy nail designs, and how easy it can be to create a super cute design with very simple process. I hope you guys enjoy it. Now let's get right into it. Getting right into today's video, we're going to start off by prepping my practice hand. To do so, we're going to be using the Easy Prep system from Veeda, and I am going to be taking some little scissors. You can use cuticle scissors, regular scissors, whatever you prefer. I just like for them to be a little bit on the smaller side, that way I can be extra careful when cutting it. I'm just taking the roll of tape and placing it on the nail, and then that way you can just easily cut it to the size. I always recommend going a little bit smaller than the actual nail bed. As you can see, there's a lot of the working nail exposed. That's gonna allow you to pop off these nails once you're done and start over from scratch. So I'm just taking the tip that I'm going to be inserting in the nail, and we're using that to kind of lift up the white part of the tape. Slide your second tip in there, and then we're going to press down to firmly adhere onto our tape. Super easy process. If you do this correctly and you apply the acrylic properly, you shouldn't have any issues popping these off. There are instances where you might get a little bit of acrylic underneath. You want to be extra careful when removing that, especially with these delicate hands. But again, if you're being extra careful with your application and applying those perfectly, you shouldn't have any issues. I'm going to be going in with my tip application. These tips are from Amazon. They are my go-to, my favorite. Absolutely love them for a straight, non-C-curve tip that is extra long. Absolutely recommend these. So we're going to be placing that with glue. You can use a glue of your choice. I am using Young Nails brush-on glue. It is my favorite and go-to. And then with my tip cutters, we're going to be sizing those tips to the preference of your client or yourself or your practice hand. So I'm going to go in and cut those. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Now we're going to be going back to acrylic application basics. Always, always, always remember, if you are a beginner, make sure you practice your liquid to bead ratio. That is going to be key. I try to say this as much as possible, especially if you are starting from scratch and learning from scratch, or you are struggling with your acrylic application. I'm going to be linking the video where I fully explain exactly how to pick up the perfect bead, and that should help. Now, if you're having any issues, always make sure to comment down below. I always try to respond as best as possible, as much as possible, especially if you are inquiring about a specific topic. So if you are struggling with anything specific pertaining to acrylic application or liquid to powder ratio, feel free to comment down below and I will respond as I can. And hopefully I get y'all a little bit of extra help where it is needed, because I know sometimes it could be discouraging and it can be frustrating, especially when you are a beginner. I'm sure you guys have been seeing this process of me applying it on this nail. Super smooth, super moldable. You can place it on there and it's not flowing everywhere. That is exactly what you want your acrylic to do. And again, liquid to powder ratio is going to be key for that. So I am going to fully walk you through the rest of the nails and explain exactly what I'm doing. I am going to be referencing to different sized beads, so depending on whether you watch my liquid to powder ratio video or not, you will understand this, but it's pretty much going to be small, medium, or large beads. So for example, now I am taking probably a small bead of acrylic and I'm going to be placing it near the tip of the nail. You can kind of see where I started off at the mid section of my tip, and then I just gently push the product downwards. I am barely moving it. I pretty much want to lay the base thickness of what I want my nail to be at this point. Now, the second, third, fourth, fifth, however many beads you take to fill up the rest of the nail, that is going to determine the thickness of the apex, the structure of the nail, and all that good stuff. So I pretty much lay a base bead to give me my thickness of nail that I want, and then we're going to focus on the structure of it. So I'm taking a second and third bead now. Now I have moved into a medium-sized bead of acrylic because I do want to add a little bit more thickness to that and structure to the nail, especially with this length of nail. But you can see that I'm placing it where I want it to be placed, and all I'm doing is gently brushing the product downwards. And I'm going to be focusing on those sides, making sure that I'm tucking them in nicely while also still getting it nice and smooth. Now right here, I felt like I needed just a smidge more to infill the transition from the second bead to the first bead that I placed. And I just pretty much placed it where I wanted to infill, blend it upwards, blend it downwards, and let it do its thing. And it infilled it very nicely. Again, medium-sized bead of acrylic. I'm going to get close to the cuticle area, but not super close. You can see that I am trying to work as quick as possible so that the product blends perfectly. So my focus is placing it where I want it to be, and then immediately after I'm going to tuck in those sides. When I say tuck in those sides, is pretty much getting the tip of my brush and pushing it inwards towards the middle. If you are having problems with your acrylic flowing over the sides into the cuticle area, over the tip of the nail, that is what you want to focus on first. Tuck them in, make sure you push all the product into the center of the nail, and you will be able to keep your shape nice and crisp so that when you go in and file, you don't have to overfile the sides, but also the acrylic from overflowing into the cuticle area. Once you get it into that area, it is extremely hard to remove it, and that can cause lifting. So you want to make sure that you are fully tucking those sides in, focusing on that application towards the center of the nail, and then you just blend it all out. Again, medium-sized bead of acrylic, we're going to be placing it towards the tip. I am only focusing on getting the thickness that I want at the tip. As you can see, I'm tucking in those sides every chance that I see that it starts to kind of spread over, and then I'm patting gently and also brushing very gently. I kind of mix and match whatever movement that I'm doing on one side, on the other side, to try to get it as even as possible. And as you can see, I'm also tapping the tip of the nail to prevent the acrylic from overflowing at the tip and messing up my square shape. Medium-sized bead of acrylic overlaying on top of the first one. Again, tuck in those sides, and you can see me very quickly just blend it downwards so that it stays in the perfect shape that I want it to stay. Super, super simple. Make sure you get your liquid to powder ratio down perfectly, and you will be able to do your acrylic application just as easy as I'm showing it here. Now, another thing that is very important when you are doing acrylic application is you want to make sure you are saturating your brush in between if you need a little bit of extra work time. As you can see, I kind of dipped it back into my monomer, and I'm using that monomer on my brush and kind of just blending it out a little bit more until I have it to where I like it. Secondly, you want to make sure you are cleaning your brush on your paper towel. I'm not saying you need to add any product to it. I'm not saying you need to get the paper towel and scrub your brush on it. I'm simply just saying you need to wipe it on your paper towel very gently so that there is no acrylic left behind. If you are one of those nail techs that is struggling with your brush getting gunky, that is a huge factor. If I am just going in and not tapping my brush on my paper towel as you see me doing here. Every time I'm moving my brush downwards off camera, that is what I'm doing. And it's simply just to remove any excess acrylic that I have on my brush, if any. It is also going to prevent you from contaminating your monomer with acrylic. If your monomer also is getting very gunky, gooey, and slimy feeling, that means you are depositing small traces over and over again into your monomer of acrylic that you may have left on your brush, and that is pretty much what is causing it. It's the acrylic being placed in the monomer. It's not curing because of the monomer, so it just gets everything nice and slimy, gunky, and gross feeling. I remember this from when I started doing nails, so don't get discouraged. It is always a learning process, but once you get it down, it is a game changer. Your speed is going to improve tremendously. You're not gonna have to file as much at the end as well. And it's so satisfying seeing the acrylic be applied so smoothly. It's my favorite part, and sometimes I just want to leave the nails like that because they look so good. But always remember to finish file. Even though your surface looks really smooth, a lot of the time we can't see it until you file. Now, another thing, when you are beginning, I want you guys to use a hand file. Even though you might be comfortable with your e-file, a hand file is going to show you things that you cannot see when you are using your e-file. The e-file leaves a very smooth surface, not giving you those white cast grooves that you can see it leaving here. So it's not going to allow you to perfectly see any divots or any indentations that you may have left with your acrylic application. So when I'm filing, I always focus on the sides first. If I am hand filing, if I am using my e-file, I go in with my e-file over the surface, and then I go in and file the sides. But I always find that when I'm using my hand file, I prefer to file the sides first so that I get that nice and crisp, and then I could just blend everything together, filing the entire surface very quickly. You want to make sure you're holding that finger super sturdy, not only on your practice hand, but on yourself and on your clients, so that the finger doesn't wiggle back and forth. If you've ever had a client complain about it hurting or bothering them, it's probably because the amount of pressure we are applying when we are filing is wiggling their fingernail back and forth. And if we're being completely honest, an extension on our tiny natural nail is not going to be enough support to keep it from hurting or feeling discomfort. So you always want to make sure that you are holding the finger perfectly still as best as possible. Now I am going to be filing the tip. My trick is always to flip the hand around and look at it from the client's perspective and then file it. So I just gave it a nice little rough file at the tip with my hand file. Now we're moving into the cuticle area. This one I always use an e-file. Get comfortable with it at the beginning as well, because you want to make sure that you get it nice and flush. And to be honest, a hand file is a lot trickier to use in the cuticle area, because that skin is so sensitive and we do not want to cut or hurt our client. I'm going to be using a 5-in-1 bit. My speed is at about 6,000 RPMs, and I'm just going to use that nicely, gently around the cuticle area. As you can see, that bit is nice and tapered at the tip, so it allows you to get into those hard to reach areas. Now we're flipping the hand around to look at the nails from the client's perspective, and this is how I'm going to finish filing my square shape. This is going to be the easiest way to get it nice and perfect. Sometimes fingernails curve in, sometimes the nail is crooked. So this is going to give you that view that your client is going to see on a day-to-day basis, so that the next time she comes back, she doesn't complain about one of her nails being crooked and it bugging her the entire time. So always make sure you are flipping the hand around to look and make sure and verify everything is going to look good from their view. Now we're going to move into our nail art application. I am going to just gently cleanse the surface of my nails and practice hand. At this point, you can have your client go wash their hands with oil-free soap, or you can always just cleanse the surface with a little bit of Young Nail Swipe. That is my favorite go-to. Now to prep the nail for your nail art, you can either buff the nail or you can always go in with a top coat of choice, add a thin layer of that over the entire nail, and that's going to allow you to have the perfect, most smoothest surface for your nail art that you are going to create. You can also do matte top coat as well, just whatever you want. It gives it a nice, perfect, smooth surface to work on. Now for our nail art, it is springtime, and since this is a beginner video, I decided to go with something a little bit more simple and attainable, especially if you are a beginner nail tech. Now I know Frenchies can be very tricky and sometimes harder than harder nail art, if that makes sense. So I am going to walk you guys through on the last nail exactly how you can easily achieve a Frenchie nail. This is not something new, this is not something that I invented, it's just something that works, especially if you are a beginner nail tech. I personally, as you can see, just free hand draw my smile line. It's what works best for me. I don't know what it is, but I prefer this method, and I feel like I always get a better crisp smile line if I do that. Again, always preference when it comes to whatever process you're doing to achieve the look that you desire. I am now taking a 3D brush and saturating my brush with the color of choice and infilling the rest of that. So I pretty much go in with my smile line, make sure that I get it nice and crisp, and for that I am using the Veeda Bella long liner. It is my favorite, especially when you are doing a Frenchie or a long line design. Again, smile line, and then we're going to be taking that 3D brush. You can even take the gel polish bottle brush or whatever. I actually mixed two colors together, so I have it on my little Veeda Bella palette. I'm just dipping in there, grabbing a little bit of that, and applying that on the rest of the nail. Now, in order to get the easiest, smoothest Frenchie design, if you are struggling, the backwards A design is always a really good option to do. What you're gonna do is picture a center line or even draw a tiny little dot at the tip in the middle. You're gonna connect those two, creating a V, and then you're going to add the line across that creates the letter A if it was backwards, whatever length you want your Frenchie to be. So if you want it higher, you can do it higher, lower, you can do it lower. And then you're just simply going to curve all of that together. And voila, you get the perfect Frenchie. It's super easy. You are able to get the perfect Frenchie throughout the entire set without having to do too much corrections. And then again, you just infill the rest of that nail with the color of choice. Now, I don't think I've used this top coat before, but before we go into the rest of the nail art, I'm going in with a top coat. The gel that I'm going to be using does not need a top coat, so I figured it would be fine to use like this. I'm going in with the Chon Legend top coat. This is a no wipe top coat, and I'm going to be adding a thin layer on the surface of all of the nails. And we are going to fully cure for a full 60 seconds. I think this is the first time that I'm using this, so I'm very excited to see what the result looks like at the end, especially because glossy nails can be a hit or miss sometimes depending on the top coat that you use. So fingers crossed that it looks really shiny and so good. Now, if I remember correctly, this is called Drip Gel from Profiles Backstage. If not, I'll leave the correct name in the description box along with link and discount codes as always. But I'm going to be taking this. This is a no wipe 3D gel. You can use it as adhesive. You could use it as making little grooves for seashells. You can do the swirl design, anything that requires texture on top of the nail. This is such a game changer because I do not like top coating them. I almost feel like it just floods and the design doesn't look as crisp. So I'm definitely going to be trying this out with different designs. So I'm going to be using that by applying a little bit on the area that I want to place my little 3D heart or flower. And I am using a combination of different pastel colors, different sizes, and I threw in hearts in there because they're so freaking cute. And using my little crystal applicator to make it a little bit easier for me, we're going to be flash curing these and then fully curing it in the light for a full 60 seconds. So I'm just using the not polished little light, curing it on there maybe for 15 seconds, and then moving on to the next nail. I just want to make sure that it doesn't slip and slide everywhere until I place it fully in the lamp. Now, spring is almost in full swing, so I'm so excited. Seasonal depression is a thing, so if you are like me and have been struggling, I'm so excited for us. So we decided to do a very fun floral design, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned a ton, and I'll see you guys next time.